People decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. You know, tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. You know, they have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, you know, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting.
Taking our time to disseminate the facts because we're dead set against Russian. This is the New World Order broadcast, coming to you live from the end of the world.
I am dead set against Russian, but I think there are a lot of people in the legacy media space right now that may call me a Putin apologist.
Why do you feel the need to apologize for him?
That's what everybody says. Isn't that like the catchphrase that they're using right now? Like everybody's using that catchphrase, anybody they don't like right now, rather than calling them a fascist or a racist or a Nazi. Now the new thing is Putin apologist.
Is this a thing that I'm just not privy to? Because I haven't been paying a lot of attention to media. I've just been working and playing Sea of Thieves a lot. So
it might be, well, I mean, you know, I'm basically in a red bubble. Because that's
you took the red pill.
I didn't take a pill. It's just that, listen, I've explained this before. What it is that the right wing's propaganda entertains me. The left wing's propaganda, I can't watch it. It's so cringe. It doesn't even make me angry, which is be more fun. It just makes me go, oh, really? I can't watch it. That's the reason why I'm in a red bubble. Make your propaganda entertaining, and I'll fucking watch it. I'll watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the weird sticking point for a lot of people is that, like, whenever the left says something, it's got a sanctimoniousness to it, whereas but it's funny because the right wing has their own, like little quibbles and little sticking points with that too, because if you ever listen to anybody who's, like, doing the heavy, like, fundamentalist Christian kind of right-wing thing, it's like, oh, they are insufferable.
Oh, yeah. And we are in the midst, since, I believe, the pandemic, since 2020, I think we are in a comparable place in our culture, relative to where we were at in 1984 during the Satanic Panic. I mean,
I feel like it's got a lot of the same, like, the energy's directed differently, but they're trying to capitalize on that same kind of energy. I can hear you there.
Yeah. It seems to be the same type of thing. Harry, you remember the Satanic Panic in the 1980s, right?
I remember that.
Where, like, a lot of people were saying, I survived a satanic cult. I saw them breed babies.
Michelle remembers.
Michelle?
Does she really?
Michelle,
Does she?
Michelle remembers after she's hypnotized by her psychiatrist, who she ended up having an affair with, by the way. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. Michelle remembers, but maybe we should forget.
Michelle remembers, but her psychiatrist's cock jump-started her brain. Let's just say that.
I kind of want to do like a t-shirt with like the 9/11 never forget thing, but just be like Michelle remembers, never forget.
Michelle remembers, you should too, never forget. So, I mean, like, you know, during that whole thing, I remember, and I was very young, so I was kind of.
Oh yeah, we were kids.
I was reading about this after the fact. The height of the Satanic Panic was in the mid '80s, pretty much, where things like Michelle Remembers and shit like that was really popular. Christian churches were having meetings where they were like, hey, here's how to protect your children against the local satanic coven. Because, what they do is they rape the virgin sacrifice. They call them breeders. That way there's no birth certificate. And they have crematoriums so that they can sacrifice the babies without any legal trouble and get rid of the bodies utterly. And all this is in response to, the question.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, pretty much. Kids playing Dungeons and Dragons. We got to, and the trenchcoat mafia after,
Well, sure, after Columbine.
After Columbine, if you wore a trench coat to school, you are obviously going to kill my kids. And you have a story about that.
Oh,
what I'm saying, all these crematorium breeder things was kind of, the response to, hey, if all these kids are being sacrificed, where's the bodies? And the moms are like, I know.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I actually remember quite distinctly that our parents were nervous about the concept of Dungeons and Dragons, and they were reading those articles and stuff like that. But then there was that Saturday morning cartoon that was Dungeons and Dragons, and our mom was like super into it because she liked the characters and the fantasy aspect of it.
I do not remember this.
So I don't know if she was like into it, but like, so there
I don't even remember the cartoon.
Oh yeah, no, it was actually, it wasn't great.
I imagine if she was watching a cartoon regularly, I would have been watching it too.
Yeah, so we were watching it a little bit. Like, we never got super into it. Okay. I just remember I liked the one character. I forget if he was an archer or ranger or whatever. But the premise of this cartoon was that it was kids from the modern era who, like, it was basically an American isekai. Are you familiar with the anime concept of isekai?
Nope.
So an isekai is a specific type of anime where the plot line revolves around somebody from this world. Usually the stereotypical trope is getting hit by a truck and then gets magically teleported to a fantasy world where, for whatever reason, the skills that were overlooked in their life in the real world come to their advantage in the fantasy world.
So the skills that they developed in, playing a game translate over to this fantasy world?
Exactly.
So kind of like Stranger Things?
Yeah, a little bit. But except it's not the other world invading here, it's them getting transported to another world.
Well, what's his face got transported? I'm not too far off.
All right, I got
But anyway, what you're saying, go ahead.
But so it was basically a 1980s American isekai where it was like these kids who would like transport to this fantasy world where they would fight the dungeon master. No, I don't know if they were fighting the dungeon master was the old guy, the old bald guy. But yeah, it was like this whole weird thing. But I remember that, like, I believe I remember that our mom really liked the archer character that was in it.
Okay.
But like, they also got nervous about Dungeons and Dragons as a concept and were worried that, like, we'd be introduced to it. So it's like, it was a very, like, thinking back on it, it was a very odd dichotomy and a very weird time to be a child in America.
I don't remember any of this, but you remember so many things that I have absolutely no recollection of. I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to take your fucking word for that. Whatever.
Well, even if I'm misremembering, it's usually not that far off.
No, when you're off even a little bit, you're off 100%.
Oh, just completely fucked.
Yeah, like you just made it up and you think it's like false memory. So you are either pretty much on point or you have a totally false memory that you completely believe in.
Here, you know what? I'm going to sit there and I'm going to find an online image of that show because I think once you see the art, you'll remember it at least a little bit.
Okay. Jog my memory. Because I do not remember this show at all. Now, I remember a crazy game that was based on a cartoon that was like super hard at the arcade. What was that? Dungeon
Oh, that was Dragon's Lair.
Dragon Slayer. And
Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair. And I remember that when we were teenagers, we tried playing this game in the arcade, and it was just like a quarter consumer. It was the most difficult thing in the world. And then,
because you just had to memorize it. It wasn't even skill-based. It was,
And then I took you for your birthday when you were like 30, I think 30. I took you to a place called TNT. Do you remember that?
Yeah. That was actually really neat. It was like an old arcade that had like a bunch of, like, it had the Simpsons arcade game and stuff like that in it. Like just a bunch of blast from the past shit.
And no quarters being fed. You paid, you rented the place out, and then you can just sit there and play any game. And it took me 10 minutes to beat that fucking game. It was the easiest fucking thing.
Because it's just rote memorization. You just have to memorize.
But when you take money off the table and you're not nervous.
Well, because it cost like $1 a game back when it was $0.25 a game.
Exactly. So the fact that it was so expensive, which is funny because the game wasn't hard, but the fact that it was so expensive made it difficult. And I'm somebody who does not play video games. So I'm in my mid-30s, okay, and I beat it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I was playing a lot more video games when I was a teenager. I don't play video games anymore except for Zelda when it comes out. That's it. It's the only video game I play.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and I know like you get a little older, your hand-eye coordination. Come on, between 15 and 35, you're pretty much developed at 15. You know what I mean?
No,
like hand-eye.
yeah.
Like you're pretty much
that was my
there.
point. Is it wasn't about hand-eye coordination. It was a very expensive machine. I actually watched a documentary about the whole thing. It's very fascinating. So that particular arcade cabinet had a laser disc player in it. That's how they got the animation onto it.
Right.
You remember like the big fucking
like the ones that were the size of old records.
Yeah, exactly.
Old vinyl records.
Yeah, so it wasn't a DVD or a CD, it was a laser disc. It was a full-size fucking LP-size laser disc.
Yeah.
And they had to have the laser disc player inside of the arcade.
Right. So
and basically
it was
those buttons that you were pressing were just skipping tracks on the fucking thing.
Either you lost or you won.
Yeah, exactly.
The move. Yeah.
So like, those things, they charged you $1 a play. And when you could play like the Simpsons arcade game or Marvel vs. Capcom or whatever else was out back then, or Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat for 25 cents a
Which
game.
was really way more fun. It's just the graphics were terrible.
Yeah, it's like, but this thing cost $1, but it like looked so
good. It looked just like the cartoon.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that and Princess Daphne was hot as fuck.
Yeah.
They had her nipples like fucking perking out of her fucking.
Oh, I know. The animators were like
they were horny as shit.
So, I mean, my theory on that, though, is the reason why it was so difficult is because it was so expensive. It made you so nervous that you wanted to do so well. I could see the psychology
playing through that.
Before you had to take one of your only $10 and put one more of them in. You know what I mean?
Well, but the funny thing is that, like, because it was memorization, you were almost like... Because, I mean, it had a reflex aspect. It would tell you what to press, but it's like, if you didn't have it memorized, you had, like, fractions of a second to respond.
Yeah. But still, I beat it in 10 fucking minutes.
Oh, yeah.
It was so easy.
Because as soon as the pressure was off of you, of like, oh, God.
Pressure was just money.
Yeah, I can only do this 10 times before I can't play this game anymore.
Now, here's something I want to tie in real quick before you show me the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. If money's off the table, if you no longer have to worry about money, think about it in the way I'm thinking about it.
Oh, as a macro concept?
Yeah, take that as a macro. The only reason why this video game was difficult at all is because you're so worried about spending your limited money on it. You want to get further before you run out of resources. Take that off the table. It's the easiest game in the whole fucking arcade. Now apply that to society. And I'm surprised as a Satanist I have to offer this apologetic, but I'm not a communist. Okay, obviously. But hey, man, maybe as a people, perhaps we've outgrown that model. Maybe people would actually do better work and be more creative, move civilization farther faster if they didn't have that pressure on them all the time.
You know what I feel like? Because I've been thinking about this a lot because we've had a lot of discussions that kind of go around like economic concepts and things like that and what the future of humanity should and could be. And you know what I think the thing is that there's a lot of jobs that they know that nobody in their right mind would want to fucking do, that they need us to do. And so they until all of that's 100% automated, I feel like that's the only reason why we still have capitalism, is to make people do the shitty jobs.
I agree. I think,
but you would think they would pay more for the shitty jobs if that was the only holdback.
No. They don't want to pay more. So what they're going to do is make everybody economically depressed, like that video that we always show. Yeah. Pause so I can show that again.
People decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. You know, tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. You know, they have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, you know, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting.
So that's the philosophy that these people have. They want everybody to be so desperate that they're going to get you into a job nobody wants to do, and they don't have to pay you a lot.
Exactly.
There's no other availability.
Because like if you took money off the table, like I feel like I can strongly say, again, after everybody would just probably stop working for like a year or two, just to recover.
Pretty much everybody would, especially in America.
Like just to recover from the oppression that our jobs give us.
This country, like, I don't know what other countries are like, but there's so much pressure in this country. I mean, success is completely modeled over numbers. It's just how much money do you have? That's it. That's it.
Even when that's a terrible measure for success, as is being proven by all the hedge funds that own like companies and shit like that.
How many women do you think are at a party situation and some other career woman comes up and strikes up a conversation and they, oh, so what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a housekeeper, or I'm a mother. You know, like, you can tell all the time that when they give that answer, they're embarrassed.
And that's a shame.
They shouldn't be. It's one of the most important fucking jobs you can have.
But yeah, it's just insane to me, like the way that everything with that works. But we've beaten that horse quite a bit, you know.
In the podcast, you mean?
Yeah,
yeah, pretty much. But I mean, eventually I do want to get into the Venus Project and stuff.
Sure,
so
sure.
Show me this Dungeons and Dragons cartoon that I don't remember.
Yeah, there it is. Dude.
Apparently, the Great White Huntress was a little obsessed with.
I think so.
When we were growing up,
but that Archer character who's in the front there.
Nope.
You don't remember this?
None of that.
So these kids all like went to school. I think the one kid who's got the Viking helmet on there is like the younger brother of like one of the other characters, and like yeah. So they sat there and they were just school kids, but they would get sucked into like actual fantasy game when they played Dungeons and Dragons. Like it was
teleport.
Like, yeah.
So why does everybody there look like they're between 6 and 16, except for Mullet Boy? Looks like he's like with that square jaw and everything. He looks like he's probably 24.
That's the funny thing. It's almost like because you see that a lot in live action stuff where they cast like 20 somethings as high school kids.
Well, you used to, not so much anymore, but. What I'm saying is that his age does not look appropriate to the rest of the cast.
Nah, yeah, I hear you there. And
like the way he's drawn, he looks like he's packing a kickstand and he shaves 3 times a day.
Nah, yeah, exactly. He's probably got stubble by the end of their adventures.
Right. And everybody else is like, you know, I hope I got my lunch money.
Well, except for Tits McGee over there.
Who's Tits McGee? The redhead?
Yeah.
She looks like she's 16.
I guess.
She doesn't look like she's like, this guy looks like he's fucking like, you know, he's got to shave his pubes twice a day. On his face. Just like it starts growing out of his pant leg. He's like, oh God, this time of day again.
Ah, crap.
Are you a hobbit? No, that's my dick hair. Sorry.
Yeah, we've hit dick o'clock again.
Dick o'clock. No, I don't remember that at all. But I do remember our parents being concerned about us. Like, they actually, if I remember correctly, instead of us being sat down and having a conversation about the birds and the bees, they sat us down and, like, were talking to us about Dungeons and Dragons at one point. Or am I making that up? Like, I kind of remember having a conversation with them about this.
the dangers of D&D, sure. Which anybody who hasn't played D&D, super fun. Get into it. It's just silly live action role playing, basically, with dice to determine whether or not you're going to succeed.
I've never tried it because real life for me is more fun. I'm an actual Satanist, so I actually do fight with demons and subjugate them and sacrifice children and drink their adrenochrome. So I don't have to role play. I don't have to have the fantasy. But I understand that, if you don't have that option, you want to pretend. I get it.
Yeah, obviously.
Harry, did you ever play Dungeons and Dragons?
Never.
Never? Not once?
Never played video games.
It's not a video game. It's a board game.
It's a tabletop game, yeah.
No? Do you play any games?
Not really.
Do you like games?
I only played chess, but then again, the only games I played when we played war games, we actually dressed up in camouflage and vests and used electronic guns and hunt each other down.
Nice.
Like they do that survival thing in the house to escape.
Okay.
But we used to go in the field and shoot paintballs at each other or have electronic guns.
Nice.
Or we used bow and arrows with big fluffy rubber tips on it. And that's what we did.
Like real bows and real shafts, but big foam balls on them?
Great big balls of rubber on it that you hit somebody.
Jesus Christ, that must have hurt.
If you knew we had your padding on, it did hurt.
Okay, so you guys wore kind of armor pads and stuff?
And I used to play with kendo sticks.
Ken dolls? Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't think you played with Ken dolls.
I'll tell you what, it's for real.
What's Kendall sticks? I was making a joke. What's Kendall sticks?
When you got those bamboo sticks and you got the chest plate.
Kendo.
And
Kendo.
the helmet.
Oh, like when you're doing the sword training.
Yeah, the sword training.
Shit. You did that?
Yeah.
That looks like fun.
No, yeah, I've always...
A lot of bruises.
I don't care. I can take that. Dude, I walk in the snow barefoot for fun. I can definitely take that. I would love to learn that as a martial art.
Oh, kendo? Yeah, it seems fascinating.
I would love to learn that. I wonder if, I know there's no place around here because we're in Pennsylvania, but when I come back to civilization, like New Jersey, which is kind of...
Civilization in heavy air quotes.
Yeah, very heavy air quotes. I wonder how much those kind of lessons cost.
To take kendo, I'm assuming it would probably be about the same as any other martial
kendo
art.
clubs in Chinatown that I know.
Well, when were you taking lessons?
I was paying $40 a month.
Yeah, but
20 years ago.
20 years ago. In like the 90s? You got to watch his math.
Late 80s.
80s. Okay, so like 30 years ago. Yeah, okay. 35 years ago, it was like so you're probably talking like $150 a month.
Yeah, probably something like that, I would assume.
Dude, I would do that in a heartbeat.
See, I think the funny thing is he's talking about like war games and stuff like that. It's like, but what he's describing is LARPing.
Oh, yeah. Which is nowadays is considered like a totally nerdy thing. So nowadays, Harry, what you guys were doing with like the paintballs or the bow and arrow with the rubber balls on the end, nowadays, the kids call that LARPing. And it's only Dungeons and Dragons nerds that do this. It's not the cool kids anymore.
Well, they're playing 2 courses now. But we got the real thing.
We got the real
thing. I tell you what, if you learn kendo and you have a broomstick in your hand and someone wants to rob you, he's got a surprise coming to him.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Well, you're not going to swing it like a baseball bat. You actually know what you're doing. You're going to exactly. You're going to strike and pull back immediately, which causes it to hurt
in the
more.
Groin.
Well, you could do anything in the groin. Somebody sneezes on my groin, I get scared and run away.
Baseball bats are strictly for the guys in the mob.
Is that it?
That's it. They like to play baseball with people's heads.
Oh yeah, strictly for
What
guys in the
means-
mob, not baseball players.
Not baseball players. So I think he's accurate. Like the history of baseball was actually mobsters made a bat, and then somebody was like, "What if we had a ball instead of my head?" And that's how baseball was invented. I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
I think that might be apocryphal, but hey.
If you use that word one more time, I am going to jump across this table and stab you with the knife that I have hidden in my ear.
That explains a lot.
I thought you could fly across the table.
No, not in this reality. It seems pretty solid. Yeah, so I wanted to get another episode up, and I was like, you were telling me to watch the one where we were talking about death, our death episode.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for one of your intros because I needed an intro for one of the episodes, and we didn't record one. And I knew that we had one somewhere, so I ended up looking through that old episode, which we junked because I got shit-faced. And the one part where I'm actually, like, watched it for a second, I'm, like, shit-hammered. And I'm like, I'm drunk. And if you say anything I disagree with, not only am I going to call you out, I will jump across this table, stab you with a knife that's hidden in my ear. And you look at me and you go, hidden in your ear? Isn't that? And I go, what? I can't hear you. and I was like, that's fucking funny. I gotta watch this. Maybe this is okay. Maybe being drunk actually worked for me. And the answer is no. Dude.
That is really fun. Like I said, I knew there were some funny moments.
There were funny moments. I might put, like, eventually I might do, like, a best of clips show that is stuff that we haven't put out yet because one of us got too shit-faced to function, but there's still, like, funny shit there that doesn't make us look too much like douchebags. I might do that eventually, but it's going to be, like, a lot of just watching through stuff that... Dude, I couldn't even finish watching the death episode that I junked because it's so cringe. Like, my assholeism...
Assholeism.
Whatever was...
Assholio.
Assholio. That was coming out of me at that.
It sounds prolapsed.
It's a little bit. I'm getting there. So let me just right now.
Yeah.
I've been an alcoholic since 2012. And you are my last friend, other than Harry.
Sure.
The Great White Huntress and I get along very well. But that's my mom. That doesn't really count. So, thank you so much for putting up with me for so long. Because, like, when you come back from blackout drunk the next day, you're doing everything you can to reshape the memories that are actually still in your head to be like, well, that's not quite so bad. I probably went this way. This is probably why I did that. Well, don't instigate me. You know, like, stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of mental gymnastics. Into trying to rectify everything.
My hangovers have become so bad the last legendary hangovers the last 5 years that I don't have the adequate energy or capacity to do those mental gymnastics the day after a blackout drunk any longer. So what I do is I continue drinking the next day until all those memories kind of slip.
Yeah, you're a big
away.
hair of the dog guy, yeah.
And then that turns into a whole nother dog. But see, here's what I do when I go on a binge. Like, it's blackout, then the next day, it's I'm really drunk and need to go to sleep.
Blackout, recrimination.
Oh, yeah. Obviously. I'm talking about levels of drunk.
Yeah.
So day one's, if we start out as day one as blackout, generally means I've been sober for far too long. And I'm making up for lost time. Like, if I'm sober for like a week and a half, like I'm trying to like turn over a new leaf. When I finally decide to drink, be like,
you're like, hey, it's a Saturday.
Just have discipline. You just limit yourself to 10 or 12 drinks, which for me is like, that's pretty good. It'll go blackout because I haven't drank in so long. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing anymore. And this is a practiced skill. If you stop, it's like being a doctor. If you stop doing it for a while, you get really bad at it. So that's my excuse. So day 2, after blackout, day 2 level drunk is super drunk. Like the room's spinning. Oh, fuck. And then you go to sleep. But you don't black out. Day 3 is the funny level of drunk, which is where I'll be at in episode 3 that we're going to record tonight, hopefully. And then day
provided you don't skip that step.
Day 4 is wake up, have 3 drinks because you feel so sick you need it, and then immediately go to sleep. Then you wake up a couple hours later, and you don't want to be awake, so you eat as much food as possible to put yourself into a food coma and go back to sleep. And then like 1 beer, and then that lasts for like 6 or 7 days. Do you think I have a problem?
So the funny thing is, apart from you having a problem, I feel like my problem's more dangerous because these steps are completely foreign to me. I will sit there and go through like in my past, I've tried to dial it back, which is why I drink ultralight beer and stuff like that. It's just to keep myself, because like a lot of people, whether you're an alcoholic or not, once you start drinking, the compulsion to continue drinking because you're feeling good generally perpetuates you drinking. So it's like, and people will be like, oh, well, yeah, I'll have like 6 beers and then I'll pass out and I'll wake up the next day with this terrible hangover. And I'm like, oh, I'm never going to drink again. It's like, that never happens to me. I'll drink like 24 beers and wake up the next day and go to work 4 hours after I went to sleep.
You don't feel good, but you don't feel...
You don't feel good. No,
you don't feel, like, incapacitated.
Yeah, no, like, I am a high-functioning alcoholic. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like my situation's more dangerous because there's so few ramifications to my extremely unhealthy drinking.
No, I feel like you're not going to get to the point where you start, and you also, let me say, you're a wonderful drunk. You're a wonderful drunk.
I'm a very happy, well-centered drunk. Yeah.
Like I was watching the death podcast that we
and I'm annihilated too at that point.
And you are so patient with me. Like I'm telling you got to take the lead. I'm too drunk. Just ask me questions, and then every time you do, I'm telling you to shut up, shushing you, like being really condescending. And I'm like, oh God, is that what? Where is that coming from? Because I don't even feel like underneath the surface I'm that person, and I'm pretending to be nice. Don't get me wrong. I hate everybody.
Oh, we all know you're a misanthropist. Any of the 3 people who watch this know that.
I adore you. I met one of them yesterday.
Oh, really?
By the way, so we'll get to that. But yeah, I think that you have to start throwing up blood before you get to the point where you start to second guess your habits. Me, every time I get drunk the next day, I'm second guessing my habits.
Yeah, whereas like for me, it's like, you know, I'll sit there and I'll even black out. And I'll say like, there was a period of time.
When you get to that point, you get mean.
I get very disgruntled. Yeah.
You get mean. Yeah. Not mean like me, but mean.
Yeah. Like I'm not like, hey, fuck you, but I'll get kind of like, yeah, I'll become a dick. Sure.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of times it'll be like an emotional dissolve that happens in me if I get too out there drunk, you know.
Harry, what about you? Do you ever get hangovers?
No.
I mean, I know you don't drink, so that helps. Oh, wait, you're drinking right now. Show the bottle on camera. So triple distilled. What do you have there, buddy?
Fermented apple juice.
Oh, it is fermented?
It's fermented with moonshine.
Oh, so when you said the apple cider, I didn't know you still had some left over that had the moonshine in it.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay. I like how he made himself like an old-time prospector jug. Yeah.
The only difference, he's a beer drinker. You do beer and you do your 6 and 7, and I never started with beer. I went straight to hard liquor.
You like cocktails. Yeah.
And I could drink a half a bottle of vodka and be pretty civil.
Good for you. I definitely, both of you guys, I admire you that. I'm jealous.
You can't handle it.
No.
I know a lot of people can't handle it, but I think it is a mental thing also. An alcoholic, I never was. I did my partying, but I got to a point I got so serious that I learned to control it.
Yeah.
But
well, you actually think your life has value. I understand that mine does not. Neither does yours, by the way. But, that's why I'm like, I could go create something wonderful, or I could just drink myself into happy mode, and I always choose the latter.
I put my energy towards other things.
I know. You think it's important.
And they were just as dangerous, if not more.
Oh, well, fucking fighting the IRS? Yeah, that's pretty dangerous.
No, not the IRS. Putting dead cord together over your head.
I don't know what that is.
Dead cord is what if they put on C4 and join the military. And you gotta do it this way.
What are we going to call that?
He's doing explosive fuses, basically.
What are we going to call that? Militant survivalism? Just as a hobby? Yeah, let's call it militant survivalism. Yeah. Harry's warism.
I think I'm still in the warfare.
I said that since I met you. You're still in the fight. You get bored when nobody's fucking with you.
Yeah,
you do. You've admitted it to me. You do.
Yeah.
You got a little tipsy once, and we were talking.
I love conflict.
And it was like, yeah, you get bored. You get bored if you're not engrossed in some sort of battle with somebody.
Just enjoys testing his mettle against people,
which I think for certain personalities is a very healthy thing, which is something I've purposefully let go of. Maybe I need to get that back. Maybe that's at the root of one of the roots of my so-called existential crisis. Well, I know it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. So there's like this great thing from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Carl,
such a good show.
The character Carl.
Yeah, Carl's
if I can find this clip, I'm going to put it up right now. Where he gets a Russian bride. Okay. And they're doing the wedding ceremony in his house, and he's got like the big overdone 70s tuxedo on. It's like powder blue with the black lace around the lapels and everything. And for some reason, I forget why, I think he's in a neck brace and a halo from something that happened earlier in the episode.
It's quite possible. Yeah.
It's quite on that show, Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Yeah. It's quite possible. And they're doing the thing, and they're like, do you, Svetlana, do you, Carl, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I think Frylock is running the wedding. And he goes, whatever. It doesn't matter. None of this matters.
Go get married.
Yeah, brother.
Get married. Yeah. And to you, Svetlana. What does this say?
Look, just say Smith or Jones or something. There's no way you can pronounce that right.
Svetlana Smith, take Carl.
Just say Smith again. It don't matter. None of this matters.
Smith.
That's the way I feel about life 100% of the time.
Carl is so good with that.
Oh my God. That's like the best. So I know that nothing matters, but you still have meaning in your life. I admire you that. I need to get that back somehow.
Well, look at the sports figures. We know the WWE is orchestrated.
Sure.
We know that it's real. People do get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure,
and
yeah.
they do it for 20, 25 years. They get to a point where they get old enough and they realize they can't do it, so they kind of fade away.
They die statistically, they die at very young ages.
Because someone's paying them.
Sure.
And even the football...
Well, also, I'm sure they enjoy the
physical sport you're doing it for a price.
I'm sure they enjoy the fame as well, sure.
They have an ego problem.
Well, what's your point about how is that relevant to meaning?
Well, people, they've got to find meaning in their life.
Right.
They got to find a goal. They got to find a point that they're going to, and they got to play it all the way or don't play it at all.
I think that's really the money mechanism in society is like, hey, man, you don't have to think too hard about it. If you don't do something that we like, you can't eat.
Well, it adds stakes to the situation, but the funny thing is that does become a detriment when it turns into any kind of creative field or
to anything creative. It becomes a detriment. I agree, and unfortunately, I'm so good at creative work. I feel like I am
Our viewership begs to differ.
I feel like I'm undercutting myself to focus on anything else, and it's a waste of my time. Speaking of viewership, and it's not to say I'm like the best artist in the world, it's just I'm so much better at that than anything else that I could do.
Sure. Yeah.
That, I feel like I'm wasting my time if I'm not focused on that. Now, speaking of our viewership, I did meet.
Yeah. So what's
here's what happened. So we had a bad week. Okay. So I think this is very funny. We got something like 8 inches of snow?
What?
How much snow did we get? 8 inches? 8 inches of snow?
Yeah, no, we got more like 12.
It wasn't 12. So how Harry has 4 trucks on the property of the compound.
Each one truckier than the last.
Each one truckier than the last. Well said. And so he has a Lincoln Navigator, an old Ford Bronco, an old Jeep, and a very old, looks like it's from the early 80s.
98 pickup. Is
it 98?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, we're getting old.
That thing looks ancient to me.
Yeah, right.
Anyway. So the pickup hasn't been started since the beginning of the winter. That's like his summer car.
Yeah.
It doesn't have 4-wheel drive, so that's parked behind me. By the way, I have a 2002 Ford Thunderbird because I have style. Guess what color? And so he's parked in behind me.
Flamingo pink.
How'd you know? And the other 3 trucks he has access to. So we get like 8 inches of snow overnight. And then the next day, I'm asleep. And he walks up to me, pulls me awake, and he's wearing something that, like, I come out of, like, the state that I'm in, looks like a cross between a military soldier and a beekeeper. When I first opened my eyes, I'm terrified. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. I don't remember where I am. And he's pulling me awake. What the fuck? He goes, hey, I'm really sorry to wake you up. You need to pull me out. I'm stuck in a ditch. I was like, there's 8 inches of snow on the ground. He's like, yeah, I know. I was like, okay. So I go outside and we get the Bronco. He took the Navigator out and he got his, you can't see the ditch in the road with the snow. So he like had his back tire stuck in the ditch. And long story short, I go to pull him out and everything. My point to this story is I asked him, where were you going? Because, I mean, we prepared. We have enough food.
Yeah.
I was like, there's 8 inches of snow on the ground. They haven't plowed this road. This is like the last road in the county they plow.
Oh, I'm sure, especially with it being a private community.
Literally, every other road in this community is plowed except for ours. Ours is last. And I said, where were you going, man? Like, this took over an hour and a half to get, because he broke the motor trying to get it out of this ditch. So that's why, it's fucked. The motor's fucked.
I gotcha.
And I was like, where were you going? He goes, I wanted to move it, so I was pulling it around the block. I was like, why? I didn't bother asking. I'm going to ask you now on the podcast. What possessed you with 8 inches of snow on the ground to take the Navigator around the block to move it? It was already parked.
Well, I wanted to move it.
He likes to move it.
Anyway.
You tell me, there's a mountain there. Well, I'm going to climb it. Why do you want to climb it? Because it's there.
That's actually a really good explanation. I like that.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is like in a alternate universe, like he's like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, like, oh, why are you wasting all this money on space travel? Because I can.
I think he sees the snow on the ground. He's like, I have a big truck. Let's go. Let's go.
I'm in my element.
Yeah. But anyway, our neighbor, I met our neighbor across the street. Very nice guy, family guy. Who?
You're lucky he's a family guy.
Yep. And Peter came over and he was helping us, trying to help us out.
I gotcha.
And everything. And he was like, dude, I watch your podcast all the time. I can't believe I'm finally meeting you. I was like, no, actually, okay, that's going to sound a little pretentious. He didn't say it like that. That's not, he said, I watch your podcast. I've never met you. Something like that.
Because he's never met you specifically.
He's never met me. I'm always asleep because I'm a vampire. So he comes over here. Him and Harry are hanging out. Harry's showing him the guns and everything.
Yeah.
I'm asleep. And, he showed him the space where we do the podcast and everything. So I guess he started watching it. And he's like, yeah, I watch a podcast. I've never met you before. I was like, oh, so you're the one.
You're the one. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You are the one.
So here's to you, Peter. I didn't ask him his name. What's his actual name?
What?
Our neighbor. What's his name?
I think it's Rob. I'm not sure.
Shit, I should have asked him. Now I feel bad.
Now you're a shitty neighbor. You're a shitty podcaster. What's going on?
I'm a shitty neighbor
here?
and a shitty podcaster. Yeah, God damn it. I was so abruptly awoken out of some fantastical adventure that I was on by a soldier beekeeper that told me for some inexplicable reason he decided to... I was a little shooken up even after an hour and a half. I was like I need to go back to sleep.
This sounds like that scene from WandaVision where like that beekeeper comes out of the sewer.
Out of the sewer? Yeah, exactly. So... Shit, I gotta ask him his name. I feel shit.
Yeah,
here's to you.
up.
Thank you very much for watching, and thank you so much for your help the other day. Really appreciate that. You're an excellent neighbor. I'm sorry that I am not, but that motherfucker woke me up. It's not my fault. And I sleep during the day. You can't drink blood and live if you sleep at night. Because I have to drink your blood while you're sleeping. And by the way, I won't sneak into your house and drink your blood anymore. I'll go somewhere. I'll go somewhere else. But you do taste good.
Well, I got plenty of practice to sneak up on people.
Do you?
Yeah.
Where?
Oh, well, I was taught by the Navy SEALs a lot of tricks.
Well, do you want to become a vampire? I can initiate you.
They're very good at what they do.
Yeah, we are.
They walk up on you. You don't even know they're there.
I know. Nobody sees me. Nobody sees me coming. Hat and everything.
Well, there was an old story.
He's only hearing like 50%.
There was an old story during the Korean War. There was rock soldiers, the Republic of Korea, and there was Marine Corps there, and they were supposed to attack this hill. At night, all the rock soldiers went up the hill with just their knives, and they caught the enemy.
Okay.
And they slit all their throats.
Oh.
They came back.
Nice.
They got about 2 hours rest. Then the Marine Corps come charging up on the hill.
Okay.
And they had no resistance.
Okay.
They found every one of them with their throats slit. That's how bad the rock soldiers are.
Okay.
You don't want to play with a rock soldier.
Now, what is a rock soldier?
Republic of Korea.
Oh, okay.
And they were good.
Nice. Okay.
We have alphabet teams that we don't even know what they call. They're called different things. It's the Ghosts, the Black Hawks, the SEALs, the Nighthawks. And these are alphabet teams that are created by this government to do all the dirty, nasty work that has to be done during a war.
Yeah, it's wet work is what they call it.
For example, if you want to blow up a pipeline, let's say somewhere in the vicinity of Russia and the Ukraine, and then blame it on the government that we're opposing, you get one of these guys.
Oh, do you remember the movie with...
That's why I'm called a Putin apologist, by the way.
Do you remember the movie when the guy said, you don't want to know the truth? You can't handle the truth.
Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men, yeah.
Well, that is the truth. There are people in this country that they're so efficient, they don't want you to know that what we created.
I do my best.
You created your own Frankenstein, and when you tell them to do a job and they come home, you kind of spit on them because they're the ones that are on the front line.
Well, that's why I don't tell anybody what I do.
But the thing is, we all have our goals.
Right.
We could be, just like a dog, we could be trained to do something.
I just chase my tail.
You haven't, either one of you have been into the situations that the generation before you were in.
No, it seems like it was a lot better back then, honestly.
So you haven't experienced it. Some of these guys get screwed up. Some of the guys come back better people.
Sure.
But you don't know until you find out.
And don't get me wrong, Vietnam was a clusterfuck, but, you know.
But I feel bad for these kids in this world. They have no idea what their grandfathers did. They really don't.
Yeah.
They don't know what they did in World War II. They didn't know what they do in Korea. And forget about Vietnam.
Well, I think it's kind of analogous to pop stars not knowing who David Bowie is. That's crazy. Like, how can you be a modern pop star and not know who David Bowie is? I think that you're right. As time goes on, the younger generations end up knowing less and less about their past, even the recent past. But I don't personally think you can blame them for that, because
you can't put the blame on anybody.
Things are changing so rapidly now that every day you wake up in a new state of hyper-novelty that you have to contend with and keep up with. Where's the time to sit back and study things from the past? You know?
Well, I think that to what Harry was saying, and something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, was I heard a quote that really resonated with me about people say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's a saying.
And there was I think he was a documentarian who was, not a documentarian, an author who was like studying the life of Lyndon Johnson.
Okay.
And sat there, and what he said was that's categorically untrue, that power corrupts people. Power doesn't corrupt, power reveals. And so he was like, if you give somebody a bunch of power, they're just going to do what they would have done. You know, like, so you're just, the more power you give somebody, the more it just shows what's already inside of them. And I think that that's a lot of what happens with the military.
I think you just quoted Thomas Jefferson.
What was the Thomas Jefferson quote?
Thomas Jefferson says absolute power is absolute corruption.
Right, so you're saying
And
it
Ben
just
Franklin
reveals.
Yeah, it doesn't corrupt, it can only reveal.
Yeah. Already inherent corruption.
Well, just if you give somebody who's benevolent absolute power, they will do extremely well and stuff like that. But it's like power will just out what is already a part of you.
First of all, I think that argument is anal ogos to what the guy, who's the most famous stockbroker?
The stockbroker?
Yeah, who's the most famous stockbroker? Everybody says William Buffett.
Oh, yeah.
William Buffett?
William Buffett's a rich guy.
William Buffett.
Yeah.
But who are you, William Buffett, or who are you, Rockefeller? Like, he's one of the ones people go to. They asked him, what is he? Do you think that people who win the lottery, do you think it's going to make them happy? He was being interviewed. It was just one of those softball questions, just like to get his person. It was a cool question. William Buffett said, here's the thing. If you are an unhappy person,
It's just going to make you miserable.
And you win the lottery, you're going to be an unhappy person with a lot of money. It's not going to make you more or less miserable. Now, if you're a very happy person and you win the lottery, you're about to be so fucking happy you have no idea. It's going to be off the charts. Like, that's the way he prescribed it.
But
you know what I mean?
But that's kind of what I was driving at. So, like, even the thing where you're talking about with service people and stuff like that, it's like some of them get broken by it and some of them it makes them. It's like it's about that pressure being put on you, because even success is pressure. So it's like
well, there's always, when you get to the top of the hill, there's somebody coming to knock you off.
Exactly.
And there's not room at the top for two.
And so that's the interesting thing to me as a human dynamic, is just the fact that when pressure is applied to you or power is given to you, it's only going to sit there and expose what's already inside of you, your faults and your strengths.
Now, here's the other thing that I wanted to say to that point. Here's the fly in the ointment, the flaw in the system. You're never going to get to a point where you have that much power if you're not already inherently corrupt.
This day and age, that's probably not true, but close enough to the truth. Yeah.
No, that's true.
But you know what I'm saying.
Well, okay.
It's not a foregone conclusion.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that RFK has any chance of winning the presidential election?
No,
neither do I, and that's exactly why. Because he's sincere. You can't come to power with sincerity. Whether or not you agree with what he says, whether or not you agree with his research, the conclusions that he has drawn from his research, you can think he's a crackpot, but I think that the real reason why he will never win the election is because of his sincerity. You just can't be that sincere and hope to gain any power over other people whatsoever. Like, he sincerely wants power, you can tell, because he sees that our country is in danger and he wants to help people. You're never going to get it that way. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
The system's going to make sure he don't get it.
You got to play ball.
They're going to kill a Kennedy before he gets there.
Yeah, well, it's not like they haven't done that.
It's not like they haven't done that.
Remember, you don't fuck with the Federal Reserve or the Feds.
Right.
Because the CIA gets involved and the Secret Service and all, they get involved. And the secret government or the fifth state of the United States,
right,
they will not allow you to change the program.
Now, here's an interesting thing that Harry brought up in one of our podcasts, and this has been hounding my brain since he brought it up. This is interesting. Tax day is April
15th.
And according to him, it is
Lincoln was killed.
Is the anniversary of Lincoln's assassination, and he thinks that the reason why Lincoln was actually assassinated is because he was trying to cut out the
he made greenbacks to pay off
exactly
the debt of the Civil War,
exactly,
and the international bank.
So he was going around the international banking system, and Harry thinks that's why he was assassinated, and that's why tax day is the anniversary of his death. Let's confirm that real quick. Hang on a second. We can just do this on Echo. Echo, on what day of the year was Abraham Lincoln assassinated?
Of the year is 2024.
Echo.
Brilliant.
Echo, what day was Lincoln assassinated?
John Wilkes Booth assassinated Abraham Lincoln on April 15, 1865.
April 15th. Holy shit. Echo, shut the hell up. You answered my question. Be quiet. I'm on a podcast, motherfucker, and I know it's the worst podcast in the world. It's the least viewed thing that anybody puts up ever, but you need to shut the fuck up. Learn when to talk. I'm the only person who's allowed to trounce people because I can't help myself.
Here's the story of a shitty podcast. Who is bringing up three variables?
I really wish instead of our symbol we had like the baby head or something like funny right there for that because I know you put like the 4 squares up on the screen. That's a new scene that you built earlier today. That would have been great. So that's fascinated me. Because why would you make tax day a specific day? Well, you're looking at me like I'm an idiot. Like, what's another explanation?
My point is there's millions of other explanations because, first of all, maybe they did that, maybe they didn't. I have no idea what the origin of that date for tax filing is.
If that is the true story, it's kind of like the international bankers going, remember, motherfuckers, if you don't play ball... Remember what we did to that gargantuan motherfucker? Right through his hat. I mean, Jesus Christ. That's an interesting conspiracy theory. And let me say once again, I'm not interested in what's true.
And that's the way they all became the crazy bunch.
I'm interested in what's interesting. And I'm interested in what people believe. And just like Game of Thrones says, power is a story. Life is a story. Everything's a story. Facts are a story we tell ourselves. It's always a story. So that fascinates me, and I choose to consider it because I think it's interesting, and it entertains me to ponder.
Sure, and that's how religions are made. So yeah, you're well within your rights.
Oh yeah, certainly that's how religions are made. That's what religions are.
That's what I mean.
It's the basic structure of cohesion to build a civilization. It's a story we tell ourselves.
Like, you know what? That bright thing that when I stare at it, I went blind. I'm assuming that's God and he doesn't want me looking at him.
Don't look into the face of God. Good call. Jesus Christ. Now, on that, with April 15th, I do have another point to bring up, but I have to go get a book. So I'm going to take a pee break. When we come back, we're going to go into my very own conspiracy theory. And just for a second, it's just an interesting thing. I want to bring up. And then if we have time, I would like to talk a little bit about the Tucker Carlson, Vladimir Putin interview, and this term that's being thrown around so liberally in the liberally media.
Which is super funny because I have not
Putin
heard
apologists.
anything about Putin apologists.
I see it all the time.
Are you sure it's liberal media? Are you sure it's conservative media saying that liberal media is saying?
Well, they I was thinking that for a second, but then I remembered like they do show clips constantly.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like one of those montages where they're like brought to you by Pfizer, or when they do the montages of every media establishment
I gotcha.
saying the exact same. It's not a catchphrase, but it's a. I guess that you could call it a catchphrase, like when they say
the same terminology,
the exact same sentence. Like they echo it across all these platforms. Like, this is your talking point. You have to say this sentence and then explain it in your own words. But they all have the same sentence. It's creepy. Yeah. So Putin apologist is being thrown around. I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the interview. But first, I have a little conspiracy theory from the world of Satanism that I want to share with everybody. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back.
We'll see ya.
All right. So while you were away, Harry had a really interesting point. We had an interesting conversation real quick. He said, because Harry doesn't have the headphones on, I forgot to charge the battery last night. So I feel like maybe you're picking up like, let me get back so I can like maybe 50% of what we're saying. So Harry asked me, he goes, how can he not believe that Lincoln was assassinated on April 15th? It's a matter of history. I said, no.
I believe.
He believes it.
I don't believe there's a correlation between that and the text.
We checked it out. And that was his next question. I said, well, because it could be a coincidence. And Harry said, well, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe things are planned. Now, here's some way where I think people, they miss the show. Here's what I think the real show is. I do believe, and we can talk about simulation reality if you want, but I don't believe in coincidence. I believe, I agree with Harry. I do believe in synchronicity. Okay? And I think that when things like that happen, if they're not planned, it is certainly whatever programming, whatever matrix we're living in, attempting to point your attention in a direction where speculation can bring fruitful ideas. For example, your theory is that the international bankers, it was a big fuck you to the American populace. That would say, why do you think that the international bankers would do that? And then you can go down a rabbit hole of all the horrible shit that the international bankers have done to countries, including the USA, over and over and over again. It brings you into a fruitful place that you would have otherwise not been exposed to by paying attention to synchronicity. Does that make sense?
So I'll agree to that to a certain extent, but it's also the thing that brings you to a place where you start seeing meaning where there is none, and putting postulation onto things that are obviously discongruous.
Who is the master that makes the grass green?
It's purple. We've been over this.
The answer to the question is you are. Meaning is not something that's objective. Meaning is subjectively created. Now, you can get to the point where the meaning that you're finding in reality is so far outside of the realm of agreement or consensus with your fellow human beings that you end up in a psych ward, or you end up that guy with the tinfoil hat on the corner screaming the end is nigh, like the early Christians who were all apocryphous. They all believed they were living in the end times. That's carried over for 2,000 years. Every generation of Christians believes they're living in the end times. So, when you get to that point where you're seeing what you say, meaning where there is none, without seeing meaning, there is no meaning. Meaning is a completely subjective thing by its definition.
No, and that's fine. I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
What you do with it can become unhealthy.
Can become an unhealthy obsession, can become...
Because it can actually impede you from interacting with the rest of the world in a way that benefits you.
Or even...
And that can turn your life worse, rather than making it more fruitful.
Sure. And it's like the whole thing with the 5G towers and you know, all of that stuff. It's like...
Correlation is not causation. That's a completely different...
I understand, but I'm saying
synchronicity.
it's a similar vein, though, because it's something where you are connecting disparate dots to each other and attributing meaning to those connections when there may be no actual connection apart from what's in your head. And I'm not saying that finding meaning isn't the purpose of life. I completely agree with you. I'm just saying... if you're not scrupulous about how you're connecting things, it can turn into a situation where you can go to all sorts of lengths to justify. I mean, look at Hitler with the Jews. Like, he was like, this is what's ruining the society. Murder them all.
Sure. Actions and thoughts are two different things. And I know that a lot of people on the left say, you know, silence is violence and all that. No, it's not. It just happens to rhyme. So here's why the 5G argument... which conspiracy theorists say, hey, every place where 5G goes up turned into a hotspot for COVID. There's a difference between causation and correlation. The correlation is that, yeah, of course, everywhere 5G went up, there's an outbreak of COVID, is because you only put 5G up in highly densely populated areas. And those are the same places where you're going to end up with an outbreak of a contagious disease.
Yeah.
So it's not causation. 5G isn't causing the virus. It's correlation. Now, there's still a connection there. So that's why this is apples and oranges. Now, the April 15th thing, either it was done on purpose for some reason, or it's completely a coincidence.
Yeah.
Synchronicity is between those two things. It's saying, hey, and this is the way most magicians, there's no such thing as a textbook occultist, because what an occultist is doing is understanding the subjective nature of reality and trying to bring his vision of what reality ought to be closer to the objective world. But what most occultists will tell you that I've interacted with is that there's no such thing as coincidence, but there doesn't mean that somebody planned it. It's inherent in the system that there's going to be connections.
Sure, because there's math involved in all of reality,
like deja vu.
So
same sort of
going
thing.
To play out the same way. I get you there.
I've had deja vu where I was like, this has happened to me before, and I feel like maybe something bad's about to happen. But then nothing happens. But it doesn't mean I didn't experience deja vu. Doesn't mean that there isn't a connection. I'm just...
Sure, I'm not saying that, like... But what I'm saying is even things like the assassination of Lincoln and the date that the taxes... It's like, if that was actually orchestrated as a fuck you to people, that's fun. Hilarious.
It's fun.
So hey, if the government's trolling us, good troll. Like, way to do a solid late 1800s troll. But, you know, the point being is it seems highly unlikely to me that would be something that was intentionally orchestrated on such like...
So in your view, it's coincidence.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying the 5G thing, bad argument. It's apples and oranges.
Okay,
we can confer. Okay, because is a connection. It's just looking at the connection the wrong way.
Okay.
Sure. All right. So what an occultist will do and say, you know, there's no such thing as coincidence, it doesn't mean it was done on purpose by, you know, human... And here's where I think most people who believe in the Illuminati or the elites that control everything and they have this master plan and every little thing that... And you remember that South Park episode where George W. and what was the fucking guy's name? Who was actually the real president? Dick Cheney. Where, you know, they're in the South Park episode, like, yes, we do control the world, but you can't tell anybody. And then the kids are like, wait a second. You don't control anything. You're actually really stupid and incompetent, and you've convinced everybody that you do control things. That's how you keep power. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's just happenstance, and they just use it to their benefit and convince everybody they have more influence and control than they do. Because if people knew the amount of incompetence that goes into things that affect all of our daily lives, we'd all freak the fuck out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at even things with, like, the Cold War, how close we came to sitting there in nuclear Armageddon because of a misreading of a fucking radar, you know?
Now, here's something. Here's what synchronicity is. And here's why I think most human beings are missing the most interesting part of the show. They're missing it. They're missing the forest for the trees. This is interesting. So, it has been a conspiracy theory since the inception of the Church of Satan in 1966 by Anton Szandor LaVey that Satanists want to take over the world. It has been speculated that we worship the devil and we call him up and we sacrifice to him, and he gives us all sorts of benefits for the sacrifices that we make to him. And he gives us occult power that we can use to control other people. Some of that's true and some of it isn't. Here's the thing. Every good story has to have a little sprinkle of what we commonly call truth in there. Would Satanists like to rule the world? We are all megalomaniacs for the most part. We'd all love to rule the world. I wouldn't. I think it's too much responsibility. I want to sit around and do shitty podcasts that nobody except my next door neighbor watches. That's what I want to do.
Your
That's
next door neighbor who you never even bothered to ask his name.
Fuck
We're
off.
so sorry.
So, here is the actual satanic plan for world domination straight from the horse's mouth.
And if there's anything that's satanic, you ask Alex Jones, it's a talking horse.
It's a talking what?
Horse.
All right.
Mr. Ed was a Satanist.
Now, the Church of Satan was founded in 1966 by Anton LaVey. Anton LaVey, his first two books were The Satanic Bible and The Satanic Rituals. At the very end of the Satanic Rituals...
I thought this... So the Satanic Witch came after Rituals then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I was just curious.
Pretty sure. Excuse me. At the very end of the Satanic Rituals, here is a small chapter called The Unknown Known. I will read briefly. Despite others' attempts to identify a certain number with Satan, it will be known that 9 is his number. 9 is the number of the ego, for it always returns to itself. No matter what is done through the most complex multiplication of 9 by any other number, in the final equation, 9 alone will stand out. Now, are you guys familiar? I know you are familiar enough with mathematics to understand what he's talking about.
Sure, because anything that you multiply by 9, if you add the digits of it, come back to 9.
Right. More interestingly, anything that you add to 9 will come back to be the thing you added to it.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. So 9
Numbers!
9 is the number of Satan. It's the number of the ego. And Satan simply represents the ego. Now, through the ages of time are cast the likeness of 9, with all cycles obedient to its law. All matters of terrestrial concern may be evaluated by the infallible resolution of 9 and its offspring. Action and reaction relative to humanity's tribal needs are contained within successive 9-year periods. The total of both, 18 years, is called a working. I'm going to stop there. Now, he gives further proof in history that certain years are tremendous vehicles for change. Now, what he's basically saying, in Anton LaVey's system of magic, 2 things are necessary. First, you push with all of your will for a desired outcome, and he gives the ingredients for doing that. Imagery, timing, desire, etc., right? All of your will is pushed towards a desired outcome. And then, here's what most magicians find very difficult and why they're unsuccessful. That's called push. That's the active force. Once you got it out of your system, you have to pull. Easiest way to do that is to forget about it. You have to become a passive force. You have to become the receiver of what you have in the zeitgeist or in the astral realm, what you have created.
Is it possible that he was just obsessed with sex and has a bit of the in, out, in, out?
The whole world revolves around that principle, my friend. And so did The guy who created the Clockwork Orange was created by sex. So yeah, everything's created by sex. Now, like Robert California said, everything in life is sex. He did say that.
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody's like super creeped out. Now, the year 1966 is when the Church of Satan was formed. That's push. For the next 9 years, Anton LaVey went on total escapade of television interviews, growing his church numbers.
Which brings us to 1975. Go on.
Building the grotto system. Put 9 years on top of that. Brings us to 1975. That's pull. He closes down the grotto system. He stops doing interviews. He has becomes a complete shut-in. So much so that people begin to speculate that he died or he closed the Church of Satan. It's not happening anymore. You know, people are actually thinking he might be dead. That's how underground he went in 1975.
And so 9 years later, just to fuck with George Orwell, he sat there and in 1984, because that's why he picked that date,
Probably.
specifically for George Orwell.
Maybe.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
I'm joking around about the Lincoln thing.
I know. Here's what I'm saying. So that, to your point, he was obsessed with George Orwell to a certain degree. He was obsessed with a lot of things.
Sure.
He loved George Orwell. And he thought that it was an important point that he made in his books. So a magician to occultist, you do not swim upstream. So if there's a date that you want to pull into your synchronicity, you do it on purpose.
So are you saying that the most righteous and holy thing on the planet, then, in opposition to Satan, bless his name, is salmon? Should we all be eating salmon to become more holy?
I think
because they swim upstream?
I think that all of you should, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So 9 years after 1975 is 1984, George Orwell's famous book. That's pretty much the height of the Satanic Panic, loosely defined. Now, that's not like, oh my God, I can see where this is going. Loosely defined, sure. The 80s, the mid-80s had a lot of vehicles, okay?
It was also the end of Reagan's first term, so.
That would be the echo of the push mechanism. Okay, now we go. Echo, shut up! Now
that's why I don't call mine that.
Add 9 years to that. We're in 1993. I mean, where was... I'm just going by American history, the history that I experienced. We got grunge, you know, we got, like, the hair metal bands were destroyed. Like, I don't know a lot else that was happening because I was 13 at that point, so that's where my head was at. But, you know, it was the beginning of politically correct nonsense, the first iteration of that, etc. That's the echo of the pull. Now, so far, nothing that concrete is going on. You're just seeing little echoes, okay? Put 9 years on top of that, 2002. What happened in 2002? 9/11.
No!
Didn't?
Nope, 2001. You're wrong.
Echo, what year was 9/11?
The September 11th attacks, also referred to as 9/11, were a series of 4 coordinated terrorist attacks which devastated New York's World Trade Center.
She's got to give me a history lesson.
2001.
2001. The end of 2001.
Oh, okay. So now we're stretching.
No, wait a second.
Okay.
Oh my God, dude.
I'm just fucking with you.
Okay, so stop fucking with me for a second. Let me make a point. All right. The end of 2001. All right. We have 9/11.
It was the 9th month.
It was the 9th month. Okay, then we have the War on Terror. Then we have the Patriot Act. Okay, now all these things occurred in specifically 2002. You know, now you put 9 years on top of that, 2011. I don't remember a whole lot happening after that. The war in Afghanistan was going smoothly. It was definitely going to be a forever war.
It's definitely a...
You don't hear a lot about it anymore.
That is a judiciously liberal way to put, but anyway.
Now, to your point, 9 years after that, which would be the next echo of push, is 2020. And to your point, COVID technically started at the end of 2019. But it didn't reach our shores until 2020. And we didn't have all the lockdown measures that are seen in retrospect as definitely being, at the very least, misguided, at the worst, draconian. In 2020, 2021, 2022. So that, if you want to know how Satanists are actually taking over the world, it's not through legislation. Alex Jones, if you want to know how the global elite are actually operating, you're looking in the wrong direction. Everything is sorcery. And what the sorcery is doing is it is forcing humanity to evolve through a process of natural cycles. That's the way I see it. That's my little conspiracy theory that I wanted to share with everybody. You guys can tell me what you think about it. And then if we have time, we'll talk about the Putin interview. But I thought it was interesting enough to bring up with the April 15th thing. And, you know, I think it's fascinating.
My point being is whether or not the April 15th thing is true or false. I mean, I'm sure that's something as a matter of record that you could look up. So we could do that if you want to see when that became tax day. Because if it's any time before Lincoln's death, then you could argue, well, he was assassinated on that day because of tax day.
Well, income tax wasn't instituted until well after his assassination.
When was income tax instituted?
Harry, what year was income tax made legal?
1913.
There you go. Well after.
What time did they start? 1911.
See, but neither of those fit in with Anton LaVey.
If you want to talk about numbers, Tesla believed in 963.
Sure.
He followed that formula.
Did you want to look up the April 15th thing?
Tesla.
Oh, it's fine. I'll believe him. He's done enough like shit with tax law that I'll believe him.
He got his information.
No, you said you wanted to find out if the reason why that date was instituted.
Oh, for the 15th? Yeah, no, I was just I can look that up.
So go look that up.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what he got that information somewhere.
Yeah.
Did the pigeons give it to him or the aliens?
Well, I don't think there's much of a difference at that point. In his mind, whatever's communicating with him, does it really matter who's communicating with him? Because either way, what he's getting is brilliant information. You know what I mean? He did get a little crazy towards the end of his life, though, by objective standards. He did fall in love with a pigeon.
Oh, no.
Gotta love pigeons.
So what was he saying about 9, 6, and 3 specifically?
That was the formula for his electronic formulas that he made.
In
and
what
he followed
way?
the number 963, and it goes way back. I think it goes back to some ancient texts that I read before.
Hit the Forbes link.
So Tesla got involved with the number 9.
Oh,
it ain't the first time I come across number 9.
They change it sometimes. Like during COVID, they changed it. But why 963 in his technical stuff?
I have no idea,
Right.
but I know.
I guess you'd have to be
Tesla.
you'd have to be a technician to really get what he was talking about with that.
It's just like your brother fixing schematics. You don't understand it.
Looks like fucking hieroglyphics to me.
Hieroglyphics. I studied basics schematics because I had to, but I can't go into like. He passed me up a long time ago.
So apparently it used to be March 15th, and then they extended it to April 15th.
So do they give a reason why? Because, I mean, if they don't give a specific reason why, other than to say Americans needed more time to prep, I don't see why they would. I mean, in April, you're already like a third of the way through the fucking year. How much time do you need?
Well, it's because your employer, if you're a W-2 employee, has to have time to get their paperwork together to then send you your W-2 to then...
So Harry's saying there's a covert reason for this.
Yeah.
And you're saying probably a coincidence. I'm going to take the third side of the coin here. I'm going to say... there is definitely meaning there, but it wasn't done on purpose by any intelligent entity. And none of us know for sure, but that's where I'm going to lean. Sometimes reality gives you gifts.
Everybody can believe whatever they want as far as that kind of stuff goes.
But as long as we don't start killing Jews, is your point. I mean... Is it okay for people to have ideas that differ from yours?
Nope. Unacceptable.
Motherfucker, bring up Hitler. You're such a lefty.
I know.
That's why I have you in the description for every episode now. Talking Head, number 5, fixes ovens for a living and suffers from a lefty brain virus. Oh my God, your lefty shows so much. You need to cover that shit up.
Ah, well, sorry. I mean, it is.
Your lefty showing.
It's these pants. I usually get a fuller cut.
When you believe things that aren't necessarily true, you can end up like Hitler.
Well, but it's a valid point. I understand it's an extreme extrapolation of the concept.
It's not a valid point.
How?
Because why does thinking about things in an unpopular way automatically have to lead?
It's not about unpopular. It's about thinking about things in a
other than the way
dysfunctional way.
Oh, dysfunctional. Okay.
So
what do you think about my theory of synchronicity being basically a rule of thumb for some sort of simulation reality theory? Is it a dysfunctional way of thinking? Or Salvador Dali's paranoid critical method, which is basically the same thing.
So it's about extrapolation. So no, there's nothing wrong with thinking that.
Thanks.
Thinking outside of the box actually brings us to new revelations and new ways of understanding things.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not arguing with you against that. My point is that you have to temper your mind to some extent to sit there and actually grapple with those kind of synchronicities, because otherwise you could very easily sit there and fall down rabbit holes that make you do terrible things. For instance, even just you sitting there and being like, reality may be a simulation. That's all fine and dandy with what you want, depending on what you want to do with that. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, well, reality is a simulation, then nothing I do matters. And so I can just murder my neighbors. I can rape children.
Well,
because it's just a simulation.
You're still going to experience being arrested and executed.
Sure, but it's just a simulation.
It's not an experience I want to have.
But you get my point, is that taken to extremes, any thought is
taken to extremes.
Yeah, any thought can be dangerous.
So let me ask
not
you,
an excuse to stop thinking. And I want to make that very fucking clear.
Or thinking differently than what you think.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no.
Now, Alex Jones.
I'm willing to be benevolent with that.
I appreciate that, and I think that's going to go a long way to your continued rulership of thought crime. So Alex Jones, do you think that he should be illegal? Do you think that people should need a license to watch him based upon IQ? Because I find him very enjoyable to watch. I find him fascinating and entertaining. But you seem to be completely okay with him being utterly deplatformed.
I mean, so as far as deplatforming people.
Well, you did take umbrage with Elon Musk bringing him back.
No, I didn't.
We had that conversation. Maybe I'm pretty sure. Maybe you were a little. You might have been one of the nights you were wine drunk.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't feel that.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time.
I don't feel that people should be, completely deplatformed, completely silenced. I don't think that's the way to stop this kind of problem. The thing is, you have to argue against it and make a better point than the person's making.
I agree with you 100%.
The issue that you end up running into with that is that there are certain forums and instances in which it's impossible to sway people's minds, and there's no remedy for that, to my mind.
Well, wait a second.
You can't say that people can't say what they want to say.
Alex Jones swayed people's minds, and why is it your responsibility to sway them in a different direction?
If you think that the way they're being swayed is harmful, is my point. It's incumbent on you who thinks that what he says is harmful to present a better case.
Well, I think that believing in the Bible is incredibly harmful.
Same here.
And that's the world that we live in, and society still exists, and it seems to be until 8 years ago. It seemed to be rolling along fairly well in the West.
Again, I'll argue like what, 25 years ago. But that's what I'm saying is that, no, you can't silence dissenting voices. That's not the answer. I was saying what I was saying as in case anyone watches this, that it's important to take it upon yourself to properly process the information that you're getting. If it's synchronistic, that can feel important. The question is what do you do with that information?
Sure. Action is more important than thought.
And my point was, I think when we get train yourself to look at things better, not you, the royal you.
I understand. Yeah. Now, I think that what's ignorant about policing thought and saying things like silence is violence, or even thinking something is violent in and of itself, and to put it in biblical terms, if you in your mind have coveted your neighbor's wife, you have already committed adultery. The reason why that's dangerous is because it turns into a pressure cooker. And if you're going to start policing people's minds...
Oh, and I'm not on the side of thought police. What I was saying was to make sure before you act that you understand that... Sorry, one sec. That the way you're extrapolating your information isn't flawed.
That's an important thing. Also, it's important to make sure that your actions are not antisocial in a way within which you cannot cope with the consequences.
Sure.
Okay. That's more important. You can think any fucking thing that you want.
But for some people, there aren't consequences.
Who in this world can act according to their own ridiculous notions without consequences?
The virus?
Exactly. So I think that what happens with society at large, when you start policing people's thoughts, and the only way we're able to do that right now is by policing speech. In policing speech, you are policing thought by proxy.
No, I agree that is not the solution.
I know, you just said that. So I think that the inherent danger in doing that is it creates a pressure cooker, which religion was very good at. You feel horny, feel guilty. You get angry, feel guilty. You're hungry and you shouldn't be, feel guilty. So people are starting to feel like they're demonized for simply entertaining thoughts. And that, if you have people under a pressure cooker, like that's a spiritual pressure cooker. That's spirit cooking. That is going to erupt in extremely erratic ways. Then you're taking something that may have simply been entertained as a thought, and it's inevitably going to lead to action because something has to happen to relieve this pressure of guilt, some sort of manifesto. You can only convince people that they're evil and wicked for so long before they act out and say, nope, fuck you, I'm right, and I'm going to do it and show you how right I am. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? It's a build-up, and it has to be released in action. It cannot be released in thought. If you need to
masturbate, we can pause.
In thought or catharsis. I felt like I was making a really good point, and once again, you just go to masturbation as your catch-all.
But no,
I masturbate constantly, and I love it.
I'm doing it right now,
and I with my other hand.
My third hand.
And I don't feel guilty about it. But I mean, think about all the people that did, or were worried about getting hairy palms, or going blind, or every time, or in the ancient Judaic tradition, every time you masturbate to completion, you are having a demon baby with Lilith that is spawning in the depths of hell. And they really believe this, and is going to come up and haunt people during the night and do all sorts of terrible things, including killing other human-born babies, because it's a competition between the demonic forces and the human force. So, I mean, building up that type of, when you tell people what they do naturally, which is part of the things that human beings are great at, that actually, in my opinion, actually makes them beautiful, is that every single fucking person is so outrageously unique from every other single person that exists. It may as well be a different species.
Except for you, Steve. You are so the same.
Fuck that guy. Fuck Steve. Hey, Steve! That's beautiful. If you try to create such a homogenous environment that we're actually getting to the point where we are taking the first outburst of thought, which is speech, and saying that type of thought is no good. Once again, we're getting back into the religious territory, and you're putting people in a spiritual pressure cooker, and you're going to end up with outbursts.
Well, and that's what I think that the current rhetoric that revolves around everything now is doing. They're intentionally putting pressure
I think
on
it's
everything.
intentional.
But that's my point, is that when you sit there and you get to a situation where you've got neo-Nazis sitting there and being like, oh, well, you know, this is the right thing to do, this is the right thought to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can't tell them not to think that. You need to sit there and be like, hey, this is why you're wrong.
Have you ever heard of that black guy that had his own show for a while? Joe Rogan interviewed him. And part of the thing he does is he interviews KKK members.
But we're not talking about Dave Chappelle, right?
No, he played one. He didn't interview the blind black KKK,
which was
member.
just fucking
Oh
hilarious.
my god, that was great! What a great bit that was. No, there's you can look this up. Actually, it might be worth showing him. So do a Google search for black guy that interviews KKK members.
You're just the worst at Google search.
Bullshit! If you type that in, it's going to come up right away. But you never listen to me, so how would you know? You have no falsifiable evidence.
KKK members.
Yeah. I bet you it's the first fucking thing that pops up. There you go. First one that comes up, NPR. There you go. Davis, that's his name.
Okay.
Davis. So let's read some of this. This is fascinating. Joe Rogan interviewed him. Yeah, so if you can scroll down. There you go. There you go. For 30 years, show the picture on the screen. For 30 years, Daryl Davis has spent time befriending members of the Ku Klux Klan. Got to go down a little bit. He says 200 Klansmen have given up their robes after talking with him. He's a blues musician. He has what some might call an interesting hobby, interviewing members, blah, blah, blah. So basically, he just goes over to these guys and he starts a conversation. And then through conversing, and he's the sweetest guy. And Joe Rogan asked, like, how do you do this? He's the sweetest fucking guy in the world. He's the type of person that has such emotional equanimity. I could not see him getting angry over anything that was not threatening his life or one of his loved ones' life. You can't piss him off with ideas. You just can't. He's just a lovely person, and he's smart as a whip. And he says, I just talk to him. And then eventually the conversation will get to the point where they become angry and they'll leave. But then a week later, they'll call him up. He's like, hey, okay, he lets it go. He lets them do them. They'll call him back up. Hey, all right, let's hang out, whatever. Let's continue the conversation. Eventually, they get to the point where, well, most of them N-words.
Yeah, you're different.
You're different.
Yeah.
That's inevitably, and he tells Joe Rogan, if I'm remembering the interview correctly, when we get to that point, I know that they're about to give me the robe. And he said he has a collection of all these people. They give him their robe.
No, that's a wonderful
It's a fucking
story.
badge of honor.
But
that's the way. If
agree.
you want to change hearts and minds, it's a one-on-one. And you do it through compassion, empathy, and there are social skills that go into it. Certain things I'm not very good at, which is why I have no friends of any race. Active listening instead of talking all the time. So, I mean, that's the way to do it.
No, I agree with you. And we've already had conversations about how I feel about censorship and stuff like that, you know. It's like, I don't think.
Well, I mean, bringing this up wasn't an attack on you. I'm just saying, like, you know.
Like, I'm on the
so
same
we were
page.
talking about Alex Jones and everything, and you were like, well, you know, but, you know, you can't trust people to. And when they have certain ideas implanted in their heads, you can't bring them out of it. Not if that's what you're trying to do, but if you're just being a cool person and you're listening to them and they feel heard, and then what do you think? And then you're like, well, I actually disagree with you. Why do you disagree with me? Well, let me tell you what I think. You know, I'm sure it takes a tremendous amount of patience to do it this way, but his record speaks for itself.
Yeah, I know. And I think that the modern discourse, the issue that we run into is that the new tool that everybody's using is your facts are false.
I agree with you. That's one of the things that sucks. There's really no such thing. You can have the same fact and it's interpreted two completely different ways by two completely different people, but that's what makes people, anything makes people beautiful. That's the thing.
Says the misanthropist.
In a lot of respects, I really don't like him, to be completely honest, Joe.
But no, I completely agree with what you're saying, and I don't think that silencing a voice is the way to stop dissent. I mean, if you look at like CIA operations and what we've done in other countries and stuff like that, where we've taken down regimes clandestinely in order to silence dissenting voices, it's never ended well for us.
Never.
And
he did the same thing in Ukraine in 2014, apparently.
Yeah, that is something that. So I listened to the Putin.
Well, we're not going to go into that. We'll do that next podcast.
That's fine.
Okay.
But
okay. So let's make pretend I didn't say that. Go ahead with your point. I'm sorry.
Nah, no worries. But yeah, it's one of those things where, to me, the difficulty in navigating it ends up being, it's incumbent on you to change somebody's mind if you think that their idea is bad or dangerous. Mm-hmm. And the issue that we run into in modern discourse is the fact that it's being pushed so hard that what you think is real isn't real.
It's InfoWars.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is, and it's an appropriately titled show. And the funny thing is, Alex Jones is not always wrong. What he extrapolates as his opinion can be devastatingly stupid, and he can even know that he's lying. Sandy Hook.
Oh, I don't know. Did he know he was lying, or was he just?
It was proven in court. There's memos between him and other people talking about it. And shit.
Ooh.
Yeah. No, he knew he was 100% wrong. He was just doing it for the money.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's internal like text messages because his lawyers accidentally sent.
Oh, you told me about that. Yeah. I don't know.
To the other lawyer.
Well, hey. Like Rick James said, and I'm not apologizing for the guy if that's the type of... But, I mean, you watch... So if he's doing that sort of thing, maybe don't do that. But...
He's being actively duplicitous. It makes
it so entertaining. And Glenn Beck became famous for the same reason on Fox News back in the 20 aughts. Yeah. That type of weird conspiracy theory, the lines connecting, and I wanted to get into spirit cooking with this amazing artist that I've come into. We're going to have to save that for another one. But, anybody who's into conspiracy theory will know what spirit cooking is. And she's actually a performance artist. Is she an occultist? Is she a witch? Absolutely. I don't know that she thinks she is, but in my definition. We're right back at the Satanic Panic again. So, yeah, these people that are drawing these wild... and Glenn Beck used to have a whiteboard in front of them.
Yeah,
he'd have pictures with lines drawn. There's that famous. It looked like a crazy person's wall.
There's that famous picture from It's Always Sunny.
Are you gonna look for it?
That's that meme photo. Hold up. It's always sunny. Conspiracy board. There you go.
Okay, let's see this. Yeah. So this was like pretty much. Oh no!
Just trying to find the image.
No, hit back. I'll show you an easier. Well, it's in a new tab.
Yeah.
So go back. I'll show you an easier way to do that. Right click, scroll down to open image in new tab.
Okay, gotcha.
There you go.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay,
I'm just getting the mouse there.
Yeah, and then you can show it. Like that's basically what Glenn Beck's whiteboard looked like at the end of every Fox News broadcast.
Yeah.
Nowadays he's doing a podcast, and he doesn't have a whiteboard, and he's super fat and grandpa-y looking. It's not the same.
He seems very subdued these days from any clips that I've seen.
Yeah. See, that was entertaining. Even though, like, I was watching his show when I was like, this is in the 90s, 2000s.
2000s. It was like the George W. Bush era.
And, I'm in my early 20s. I don't know my ass from my elbow, except when 9/11 happened. I was like, aha, Anton LaVey was right. I was there already. But the reason why I'm watching this fucking Glenn Beck is not because I believe in anything he's saying, because he talked about...
it was nonsense.
He talked about Satanists.
Association bullshit.
He talked about Satanists and the New World Order to the point where, he's like, and he's it was on par with Satanists steal unbaptized babies and drink blood from their bodies with straws.
Yeah.
Which is something medieval Christians used to say about Jews. It's like recycled propaganda.
It's something in North Korea says about Americans.
There you go. It's weird. These things just they work. So everybody uses them. And I'm sitting there going, I haven't been a Church of Satan member for that long, but I remember them saying in the Satanic Bible, don't hurt animals or children. Interesting. So I knew it was bullshit, but it fascinates me. And I like it. And I don't think that people like that. Put a crazy person on the camera. Let me enjoy it. It's fine.
See, the fucked up thing is there was a large group of people who took everything he said as writ.
Sure.
Like, yeah, and again,
and that's funny too.
It's funny, but it's how we ended up here. I mean, I think there's a line between
It's exactly
Glenn
how
Beck
we ended
and
up here.
Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones.
You're not having fun with where we are? You don't think it's fun?
I think it's only fun because I'm not directly targeted or involved.
Nah. Well, here's something interesting. I didn't watch the news at all for so many years, to the point where the election between Hillary and Trump, I know everybody turned that into a Super Bowl party. It didn't even occur to me that it was election day.
I didn't vote.
Okay. No, I never do. I think it's a waste of time. Hey, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. I'm not complaining about shit. I think everything you fucking hairless half monkeys are doing is hilarious. Keep doing it. Anyway, I went to work the next day. And I was working with young photographers. So they're all straight out of art school and shit. And they're setting up their equipment. I got there a little late because I was hungover. And they're setting up
because he was drinking for unrelated reasons.
Totally unrelated. I was drinking without the TV on, staring at my wall. And
it's a good wall.
It's a great wall. Any wall in front of me when I'm drunk is a great wall. And they're talking about like, well, hey.
Have you seen that one? That one's pretty good.
So legitimately, they're having a conversation where they're legitimately saying, and this is in 2016, right, the day after the election, legitimately saying, well, if they bring slavery back, that's the last straw. I'm out of here. And I was like, and I'm trying to piece together, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, it was election night. Who won? And they looked at me and they go, right. I was like, guys, I don't know who won.
Yeah, no, I literally don't know.
I'm assuming from your conversation it's the orange guy?
The orange guy.
But yeah, they don't believe me to this day, probably.
Orange, you glad you didn't watch the election.
Here's where I got sucked in a bit. I lived in a city that was on fire for 3 days before I found out there was a riot going on 6 blocks from my house. That's disturbing. And then after that, I was like, okay, I have to find trusted sources immediately that are up to date, that I will know if something's going on in time to possibly save my ass. But then I don't trust the mainstream narrative. So I did end up in a little bit of a red bubble, and I am swallowing some of this shit that, like, what's her fucking name? Can you bring up one of these tabs that has her name on it? Like the first one, maybe?
I don't know.
The spirit cooking stuff.
This?
Go left. Marina Abramovich, who's a performance artist, where they're saying, like, this is evidence that the elites are pedophiles and that they eat people and they suck out their adrenochrome and that they're all members of the Church of Satan. And like, well, wait a second. Like, you know, when you get to that point, I'm entertained by the prospect. But I'm not going to swallow that because I know what art is, and I know what Satanism is, and I know what magic is,
Well, but that's
and
the
I know
whole thing.
and I know what religion is, and I know what ritual is, and I know what purposes these serve. And to these fucking assholes that are overtaking Rumble, anything that doesn't have a cross on its banner is satanic.
Sure.
Anything that's not on your knees praying to a god that's over you is satanic.
And those people need to be murdered extrajudicially. Obviously.
I think they make it fun. I disagree.
Oh, no. I mean, they think you, as a Satanist,
they
need
do.
to be murdered
They totally do.
extrajudicially.
Now, here, if that starts to actually affect me,
Which, yeah,
here's what I
obviously
will
it has.
do. The next podcast, first of all the podcasts are coming off the internet, and I will show up in the next one with a blue blazer and a little gold cross around my neck, and I'm not going to talk about shit that has anything to do with that. You just blend in. You do whatever's good for you.
I think your painting training is affecting your worldview. Just blend it. Just blend it.
Good point.
It's fine. I fucked up here. I'll just blend it. Just blend it.
All right, we're getting a little long in the tooth here. Do you want to do an Alex Jones segment? Or do
you have stuff prepared?
I do. We did one less episode last month, and I forgot to prepare new shit, but I do have Alex Jones sitting right over
sure,
here.
we can do it.
Want to do Alex Jones? All right, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please remember to subscribe. If you're on Rumble, where we seem to be getting most of our views right now, please follow. And most importantly, rather than follow, subscribe, thumbs up, all that shit, which I really do hope if you enjoyed any of this, you do. We are trying to get this kicked off a little bit. Took us a while to get our legs under us. I feel like we're hitting our stride. I would like to see some numbers from people. On Rumble, we have 4 followers at this point. 3 of them are me and the other one's my mom. But every single video that we put up is getting, between 40 and 100 views. YouTube just hates us at this point. Our viewership's going down on YouTube, which I get it.
I can think of a reason.
So, I mean, if we're getting that many more views than we are subscribers, or what's called on Rumble follow, please follow, subscribe. Most importantly, though, if you saw anything in this that you think was interesting, share it with your friends if you think they'd think it's interesting. They don't have to watch the whole thing. Just share it with them and tell them, hey, check it out at 45 minutes in. This is something that we used to talk about. Spread it around a little bit. We'd appreciate it. And then we will not have to detonate your property with a death laser from space with the Jewish space laser program. We won't have to do that if you follow us.
Otherwise, you're forcing our hand. But beyond that, I would like to say that really, if you want to engage in any way, if you would like to sit there and voice your dissent against what we're saying.
Oh, comments.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd love that.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since we had
something to talk about.
It's been a long time since we had comments. I thought that was a really fun episode. For some reason, one week we got a shitload of comments and we just went through them and we were talking about them. That was fun.
But
I would love comments.
If you'd like to engage in this ludicrous conversation, please engage. That's all we're asking. Engage.
Ladies and gentlemen, from all of us, thank you very much for watching. And here is Alex Jones.
All right, people, Alex Jones here, coming to you live from InfoWars, and I gotta tell you, the nation is in crisis. We've got all these terrible things going on, and we don't even understand them, and I'm here to help you disseminate this information. And I gotta tell you, I feel like the more I try to talk to you people, the more I feel like you're anti-Semitic. So I'm going to sit there and I'm just going to try to disseminate this to you now. And we're just going to jump right into the headlines because we got a lot to talk about this week.
That was good.
All right. Car hits boy. Car damage. Now, This is important because you have to understand that property is the thing that American law has been created to support and govern. I mean, when they sat there and they decided that corporations were people, you have to understand that that makes cars bigger than humans because, let's face it, the Detroit auto industry does not make humans. I mean, sure, in the ghetto, I suppose. But the point is that, yeah, they're making humans. Those humans are there to make cars. You have to understand your purpose. So when this car hits this boy and this car gets damaged, this is an affront to democracy. This is an affront to capitalism. You have to understand that this collision between this car and this 11-year-old, now, at 11, he should know better because you have to understand that that is just too old to sit there and be damaging cars. He's a juvenile delinquent. He needs to be put into some kind of for-profit juvenile delinquency system. I'm going to heavily invest in them just from this headline. All right, next we have man shot by Florida felon taken to Walmart instead of hospital. So, I'm not sure what this headline's implying exactly because the man was shot by a Florida felon and he was taken to a Walmart instead of a hospital. And I think that's the way our country operates. You have to understand.
Oh, Florida.
Well, no, hospitals in general. You have to sit there and think about the fact that this hospital, that's Obamacare, that's socialized medicine. They're bringing him to a place where shit actually gets done, which is the aisle of Walmart where I'm assuming they probably sewed him up with, I'm guessing, fishing hooks and tackle. I'm going to guess that he was fine. I mean, I think they sell metal detectors there. I don't know. I have all my shopping done by Hispanic people that I underpay. But you have to understand that this man was shot by a felon. Now, how did that felon get back on the street? I'll tell you. He was probably a Walmart employee. Because you have to understand, these people are the lowest of the low. These people, sure, they won't even scan your items anymore. The last time my maid was in a Walmart, she told me she had to check herself out. And I told her, I check you out all the time. I don't understand what the problem is. And she sat there and said, that's sexual harassment. And I sat there and said, where's my toilet paper? Because frankly, I need to go into the bathroom and think about you. All right, murderer says the detective ruined his reputation. Now, this is what we're coming to, people. Anybody in this crazy PC age, you sit there and you end up in these situations where these women can accuse men of anything. Oh, you sexually harassed me, like my maid is now currently prosecuting me for. And you sit there and you're like, oh, this man murdered me. Where's the line? What are the rules even? Can I not stab somebody without a detective sitting there and ruining my reputation, taking my job, getting me canceled? This is cancel culture at its absolute worst. This detective comes in and says, that man stabbed that other man. Are you that man? Let him speak. If I murdered somebody, then that man should be on the stand. We talked about this before, about how not enough murder victims confess to police. This is the problem, is because you've got these detectives intervening on their behalf. What's this detective know about me stabbing him? Forensic evidence? What kind of word is that? Sounds like Latin. That's what the devil speaks. Now, I gotta tell you, in order to keep us from stabbing you, you need to sit there and support us by sitting there. And I mean, we're on a razor's edge here, people. And if you don't want that in your jugular, you need to send us money and we'll send you back things that you may not need. But I'm telling you, they're going to make you a better person, this country a better country, and me a better invested person. Now, what do we got?
Today, Alex, we have analyptical.
All right, so analyptical. Here's what you have to understand. You get all these liberal kids, they're coming out of college, they're analyzing everything. And what's the root word of analyze? Anal. Now, you don't want to sit there and deal with these kids. Ben Shapiro destroys them constantly in college debates as a 30-something-year-old man with multiple kids who kind of doesn't make sense. But he will destroy these kids because they're just being anal. And if you want to sit there and fight back, you need to get analyptical instead of analytical. Now, let me tell you what this does for you. It will sit there, and if you feel like you're full of shit and you just need to expel that feeling from yourself, you take these supplements, I'll tell you, they will make you flow like a fire hose of just terrifying proportions. I have blown down a building with my farts after taking this. Sure, it was wet. Yes, some of it hit the windows. I hear somebody even ate part of it accidentally because I was sitting over her while I did it. But you have to understand. So here's what we do. We take the anuses of baboons. Now, these baboons they get into these hierarchical struggles. They sit there and they get into these scenarios where they're proving dominance over each other, and only the ones who are not dominated, the ones with the tightest sphincters, we dominate those baboons by cutting their sphincters out. Because only the most muscular, masculine baboon sphincters go into this product, and that's a Alex Jones guarantee. So we take them, we pull them out like taffy. We put them into a taffy pulling machine. It turns into kind of like a gummy kind of situation, but the muscle's still there. Then what we do is we sun dry them in an HMO free facility. And once they're nice and puckered again, that's when you can chew them up. And so it's just these, they come there in we have cherry flavor and raspberry. The raspberry flavor makes a sound.
Oh my God.
When you eat it. And that's how you know that tightness is sealed in, because when you bite it into it and it makes the raspberry sound, you know that you're getting a quality product. And that's how you can keep your anus tight and puckered, defended against these liberal monstrosities. Now, survey finds fewer deer after hunt. Now, here's what they're not telling you. These deer were hunting humans. And at the end of the hunt, they found fewer deer than they were looking for. I'll tell you, that detective who was studying that murder by that felon, that was a felon deer.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you, 10 point buck. Just came up, sat there and gouged a man. Then he ran away. There were fewer deer at the end of the hunt than there were at the start. Where did they go? That's what I want to know. The Biden administration, they're hiding this information from you. Look at the immigration crisis. Oh, it's not that many deer coming across the border. Well, if that wall was there'd be zero deer coming from the border. Why are there fewer deer? Some of them just disappeared. Guess where they ended up? Taking your jobs. All right. And scientists to kill ducks to see why they're dying. Now, this is important. If you want to understand why people are dying, this is the exact thing that I said we should have done with the coronavirus. I don't know why they didn't sit there and take my lead on it. Because as soon as people got infected, what you should have been doing was cutting them open and figuring out why they're dying. You don't wait until they're dead. You're not going to get good information. It's not fresh. I mean, that's why I eat living children. You can't take anything from them if they're already dead. The soul has already dissipated. It's still in the tender meats if you eat them alive. And that's why you need to sit there. If you want to figure out what's killing America, you need to cut it open and let it bleed out.
Oh my God, that was perfect. That was perfect. Alex, I do want to point out, I used to do a lot of image overlays and AI created video overlays for your newscasts, and lately I haven't. One of the reasons why is because anytime you say something that kind of paints a visual picture lately, it's impossible for me to create and post an image or a video of this thing. And I think that your description of that last nutraceutical, how we make it from the anuses and taffy machines, is a case in point.
It's because I'm artificially intelligent.
That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching the New World Order broadcast. And just remember, we're watching you too.
Someone is watching. There are strangers